What if I told you that an interstellar object, something born in another star system, just sent a signal aimed directly at Earth? And that right now NASA doesn't know what it means. You'd probably think this sounds like science fiction. But on the morning of October 17th, 2025, that fiction became fact. Deep in the quiet sands of California's Mojave Desert, one of NASA's most powerful listening posts, part of the Deep Space Network, detected something that shouldn't exist. Not static, not background noise, not a random pulse, but a structured, repeating electromagnetic signal coming from the mysterious traveler we call 3I Atlas. For weeks, 3I Atlas had been gliding silently through the outer reaches of our solar system, a faint speck of light against the backdrop of infinity. But at 3:42 a.m., that speck spoke. The signal lasted exactly 11.3 seconds, then stopped, and 47 minutes later, it came again. Same duration, same strength, same precision. At first, engineers assumed it had to be an equipment malfunction. Cosmic rays, maybe. A misfire in one of the receivers. But as the hours passed, one thing became clear. This wasn't noise. It was intentional. And that's when the numbers started to change. Within just 5 hours of continuous monitoring, the signal's intensity increased by over 300%. It was as if whatever was inside that object was waking up, charging, preparing. NASA's systems were cross-checked by independent observatories around the world, from Madrid to Canberra, and every one of them confirmed the same thing. The source was real, the location was precise, and it was coming from 3I Atlas, an object we still barely understand. To appreciate just how strange that is, remember this: 3I Atlas isn't from our solar system. It's an interstellar visitor, the third ever detected after Oumuamua and Borisov. But this one behaves like neither. Its light curve is uneven, suggesting it's not a solid body. Spectral scans hint at hollow regions inside, like cavities or chambers. And now, it's transmitting. That's when scientists realized the data didn't just defy expectations. It defied everything we thought we knew about natural objects in space. One researcher at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory described the moment in her notes: "It's not the signal itself that scares me, it's how perfectly timed it is. Like a heartbeat echoing through the void. Mechanical, deliberate, alive." Think about that. Across light years of emptiness, a silent traveler enters our solar system, drifts past Mars, and begins to speak. But to whom? And why now? As one analyst put it, space doesn't send greetings. Something or someone initiated that transmission. And while NASA scrambled to interpret it, a more chilling pattern began to emerge. Because the signal wasn't just repeating, it was evolving. And by the time scientists noticed what direction it was pointing toward, it was already too late. What happens next will change how we see the universe and our place within it forever. By dawn, the signal from 3I Atlas had stabilized. Not in volume, but in structure. It wasn't random anymore. It was organized. A team at the Deep Space Network began mapping the pulse intervals and discovered something impossible. The gaps between each burst weren't arbitrary. They matched prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Numbers that don't naturally occur in the rhythm of the cosmos. Numbers that mean something to anyone familiar with the language of mathematics. Primes are the universal fingerprint of intelligence. They're not a coincidence of physics, they're a message. When scientists plotted the sequence visually, it formed a spiral, a geometric design eerily similar to the golden ratio seen in everything from hurricanes to galaxies to the human DNA helix itself. It was almost as if the universe was trying to speak back to us, using its own blueprint as a translator. And that's when a strange realization began to ripple through NASA's control rooms. If this pattern was truly deliberate, then it wasn't just a message, it was an invitation. One astrophysicist, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, described the feeling best. It's like someone out there knew exactly how we think, how we count, how we perceive structure, and they used it to say, "We see you." Across social media, the leaks began almost immediately. A few frames of the raw signal data appeared on an anonymous science forum, then vanished within minutes, but not before millions had seen it. The reaction was instant. Some called it proof of extraterrestrial contact. Others claimed it was an elaborate AI hoax. But deep inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, no one was laughing. because they just discovered something even more disturbing. When they superimposed the last 10 transmissions from 3I Atlas onto a celestial coordinate map, the signal's phase shift pointed directly toward one location, Earth. At 11:07 a.m. UTC, the data feed coming from the Deep Space Network showed a shift. The waveform changed shape, pulsing faster, sharper, more precise. And then, it split. What had been a single repeating tone fragmented into two synchronized frequencies, separated by exactly 3.14 Hz, the mathematical constant pi. But the second tone wasn't random. It was encoded. A rapid binary stream began transmitting alongside the primary signal, one that, when decoded, revealed a set of coordinates that could only mean one thing. The signal was locking onto our planet. First it aligned with the Moon, then the orbital path of Earth itself, then finally a fixed point near the South Atlantic Anomaly, a region of Earth's magnetic field known for its strange radiation surges and satellite blackouts. It wasn't just transmitting at Earth, it was tracking Earth. In the hours that followed, systems at the Deep Space Network began to behave erratically. Receivers overloaded, telemetry screens flickered. In one instance, the automated signal relay to the Madrid station went offline for exactly 66 seconds, only to reboot with a slight modification in its internal timing clock. The same delay, 66 seconds, was later found in Canberra and Goldstone, as if something was synchronizing them. Dr. Hayes later said, "It felt like the signal was learning us, mapping our systems, our reactions, like a mirror watching the reflection." Meanwhile, radio telescopes in Chile and Hawaii confirmed the same distortion, an evolving waveform, tightening in frequency, converging toward one exact bandwidth, 1420 MHz. That number should sound familiar. It's the natural emission line of neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, and according to decades of SETI research, the most logical frequency for intelligent civilizations to communicate on. So when 3I Atlas began transmitting at 1420 MHz, the implication was unmistakable. Whoever or whatever was behind this knew exactly what we were listening for, and as the data stream intensified, an eerie new pattern began to emerge in the signal's carrier wave. A faint, rhythmic modulation, almost like a voice. Spectral analysis revealed harmonic layering that didn't correspond to any known cosmic source. The signal was no longer static. It was dynamic. NASA's official classification changed overnight. What began as a possible interstellar anomaly was now officially labeled Intelligent Source Active. And just like that, everything changed. Because whatever 3I Atlas was, it was no longer silent. It had found us. The moment NASA classified the signal as Intelligent Source Active, everything changed behind the scenes. Within hours, the public feeds went dark. Live telemetry from the Deep Space Network vanished from NASA's servers. And scientists who had been openly discussing the signal online suddenly stopped posting altogether. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a command. Inside the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a rarely invoked internal directive was activated, one that most NASA employees didn't even know existed. It's called the Silence Protocol. Officially, it's a containment measure. Its purpose, to isolate any incoming transmission that could potentially trigger global panic or interfere with national security communications. In simpler terms, it means no one talks. From that moment on, only a select circle of 12 people had full access to the signal feed. Every email, every call, every discussion about 3I Atlas was logged, encrypted, and monitored. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, who had been leading the initial analysis, later wrote in a private note that leaked weeks later, "It's not that they don't want us to understand it, it's that they're afraid we already do." Meanwhile, the signal continued, faint, steady, and relentless. Every 11 minutes and 47 seconds, another pulse would arrive, perfectly timed, like the ticking of a cosmic metronome. But then something new happened. 3 days into the silence. Protocol. The pulses stopped. For nearly 14 hours, 3I Atlas was quiet. No transmission. No activity. Just silence. And when it returned, the signal had changed again. It was slower now, deeper, almost like it was waiting for a response. Dr. Hayes described that moment as the most haunting sound in the history of science. It was like it knew we were listening, like it could feel the silence. That was the breaking point. NASA's upper command realized this wasn't a signal you could simply study. It was one that might be studying us back. And so, the silence protocol wasn't just about secrecy anymore. It was about protection. Protection from what, though? From the public? From panic? Or from whatever was inside 3I Atlas and the possibility that it wasn't sending a message, but issuing a warning? With the public cut off and scientists working under lockdown, speculation began to spread like wildfire. If this wasn't a natural object, what was it? 3 dominant theories emerged, each one stranger than the last. The first came from a group of astrophysicists in Cambridge. They proposed that 3I Atlas was a derelict probe, an interstellar relic left adrift by a long-extinct civilization. Its transmissions, they argued, were nothing more than an ancient distress call, a digital ghost echoing through the cosmos. But if that were true, why was the signal evolving? The second theory, and perhaps the most unnerving, came from a collaboration between SETI and MIT. They suggested that 3I Atlas could be a von Neumann probe, a self-replicating machine designed to seek out intelligent life. If correct, that would mean its transmission wasn't random at all. It was instructional, a blueprint waiting to be understood. And then came the third theory, the one NASA refused to comment on. A small but vocal group of quantum physicists proposed that 3I Atlas might not be a probe or a vessel at all. They believed it could be a message container, a compressed data object traveling through interstellar space, carrying information from one star system to another. Not across space, but across time. Their reasoning was based on one chilling observation. When they decoded part of the binary signal, the first readable sequence matched a segment of the Arecibo message, the radio transmission Earth sent to space in 1974. In other words, 3I Atlas was sending our own message back to us. But here's the problem. It wasn't an exact copy. There were changes, tiny alterations in the sequence, corrections, almost, as if someone or something had edited it. If that's true, then 3I Atlas isn't just an object from the stars. It's a response to something we began 50 years ago. And the fact that it arrived now, just as humanity reached its highest level of space communication in history, that timing feels less like coincidence and more like design. In science, there's a line we almost never cross, the one between discovery and belief. But 3I Atlas forced us right up to it and then pushed us across. 2 weeks after the silence protocol began, a joint analysis between JPL, MIT, and the European Southern Observatory yielded something no one could explain. Within the faint electromagnetic spectrum of 3I Atlas's signal, hidden beneath the main carrier wave, researchers found structural harmonics. In plain terms, patterns so mathematically perfect they could not occur in nature. Think of it like this: the difference between the sound of a thunderstorm and the notes of a symphony. Both are made of energy, but one is chaos, the other, design. Those harmonics formed repeating ratios that mirrored the Fibonacci sequence, the same mathematical spiral that shapes galaxies, seashells, and hurricanes. Only here, it wasn't just geometry, it was code. When translated into visual form, those harmonics produced something eerily familiar, a lattice of interlocking triangles and circles, a geometric framework identical to a Dyson swarm schematic first proposed by Freeman Dyson in the 1960s. In other words, it looked like an energy collection system, something built to draw power directly from a star. At first, scientists thought it had to be coincidence, but then came the spectrographic data showing that parts of 3I Atlas reflected light as if made of a composite alloy. Not ice, not rock, but metallic material, layered, structured, and engineered. Even more unsettling, that same pattern appeared to modulate as the signal strengthened, as though the object was adapting to the observation itself. Dr. Nadir Khan from MIT described it best. It behaves like an instrument, not a rock. Something designed to react, to respond, to learn. And as 3I Atlas continued its trajectory toward the outer solar system, one more anomaly emerged. Tiny bursts of energy released at perfect 90-minute intervals, each identical in frequency, almost like thruster pulses. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't drifting anymore. It was navigating. And that's when the data stopped making sense altogether. Because according to the trajectory models, those pulses weren't random course corrections. They were steering the object toward us. That was the moment the research team realized they weren't studying a piece of debris. They were witnessing engineering on an interstellar scale, a machine that had been traveling for millennia, now awake in our sky. But the most chilling part wasn't that it was built. It was why it might have been built. And that's what leads us to the awakening. On the night of November 3rd, something impossible happened. For the first time since it entered our solar system, 3I Atlas began to accelerate. No comet does that. No asteroid. Nothing obeying the laws of Newtonian mechanics, just speeds up against gravity. Yet that's exactly what it did. Its velocity increased by nearly 17% in under 6 hours as it passed the orbit of Mars, a maneuver that would require a controlled thrust equivalent to the total output of the space shuttle fleet combined. NASA's Deep Space Radar confirmed it. So did ESA. And then, inexplicably, all telemetry cut out at once. When contact was restored 47 minutes later, 3I Atlas was no longer where it should have been. It had shifted position by nearly 12,000 kilometers, almost as if it had deliberately moved out of sight. What followed next was even more bizarre. The repeating signal, the heartbeat of 3I Atlas, changed form completely. The clean, precise pulses began to distort, stretching into a rising harmonic tone that lasted exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds, 3.14 pi, a universal constant, a mathematical signature that defines circles, orbits, and geometry itself. That was the moment many physicists stopped calling it a signal at all. They began calling it a communication event, because hidden within that transmission, encoded in amplitude variations so precise they required quantum-level measurement, was a new message, one that read, in binary, "We are awake." That phrase sent shockwaves through every lab connected to the analysis network. At first, some believed it was a decoding artifact, an illusion of the algorithm. But 3 independent labs confirmed the same output, character by character. We are awake. So what does that mean? Was 3I Atlas referring to itself, a machine reactivating after eons of silence? Or to something else? Something here, now conscious of our existence? Because moments after that transmission, the object's light signature changed dramatically. The faint reflection of sunlight across its surface flared, not randomly but in a directed beam, aimed straight toward Earth's atmosphere, a focused pulse of visible light. White, intense, blinding, and just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. From that night onward, 3I Atlas began to fade, its brightness diminishing with each passing day, until it vanished completely from all telescopes. Not broken, not destroyed, just gone. As if it had folded itself out of existence, as if it had never been there at all. And yet its final transmission, that haunting declaration, "We are awake," remains stored on NASA's secure servers to this day, locked, encrypted, and classified under the highest clearance. But perhaps the question isn't what woke up, it's who or what woke it. Because if 3I Atlas was asleep for a reason, then maybe it wasn't meant to wake up yet. And if it did, maybe the universe is about to find out why. For days, astronomers all over the world tried to track it. Every telescope, every array, every deep space network tuned to one point in the sky, the last known coordinates of 3I Atlas. Nothing. Not a glimmer, not a photon, not even the faintest trace of reflected sunlight. It was as if the universe had taken a deep breath and then erased it. Now, objects don't just disappear in space. Even if a comet breaks apart, its debris leaves a trail. Even if it burns out, it leaves a signature, a chemical fingerprint, a whisper of dust. But 3I Atlas left nothing. And yet, the data told another story. The Deep Space Network logs from Canberra and Goldstone revealed a subtle gravitational anomaly at the exact moment the object vanished. A microscopic warping of space-time, so small it lasted less than 2 seconds, but powerful enough to register as a measurable distortion. That shouldn't happen. Not for an object of that mass, not unless it carried with it an energy density far beyond anything we've ever measured. And so a new hypothesis began to form. What if 3I Atlas didn't disappear, but transitioned? Some physicists theorized it could have entered what's known as a non-Euclidean frame, essentially slipping through the geometric fabric of space-time itself. To us, it would look like vanishing. But from its perspective, it might simply have moved into a layer of reality we can't yet perceive. Others weren't so sure. They pointed out a chilling detail that only emerged after NASA decrypted the last packet of transmission data, buried deep in the final seconds of its signal, in a nearly imperceptible modulation, was a string of coordinates. When plotted, those coordinates didn't point to deep space. They pointed directly to Earth, specifically to a region of the southern Pacific Ocean, a stretch of open water roughly 900 kilometers west of Easter Island. For weeks, surveillance satellites monitored that region, and on the night of November 18th, they detected a faint electromagnetic spike, one that matched the same frequency 3I Atlas used before it disappeared. Just a single pulse, then silence. No ships in the area, no storms, no logical explanation. Some scientists dismissed it as coincidence. Others quietly believed that part of 3I Atlas might have arrived. The official report labeled the event as an atmospheric anomaly, case closed. But for those who'd spent their lives studying interstellar phenomena, the implications were terrifying. Because if 3I Atlas could phase out of existence and reappear within our atmosphere, it would mean one thing. Whatever intelligence guided it, whatever purpose it served, had finally crossed the boundary between out there and here. Dr. Hayes, in her final journal entry before the project was terminated, wrote a single line: "It didn't leave, it just changed where it hides." And that's perhaps the most unsettling truth of all, because the stars didn't lose 3I Atlas, we gained it. And somewhere hidden beneath the calm reflection of our planet's oceans, or drifting silently above the atmosphere, something ancient, engineered, and awake might still be listening, watching, waiting, for the moment when we finally answer back. 3 long weeks passed, weeks of silence, weeks of unanswered questions, and just when the scientific world began to convince itself that 3I Atlas was gone forever, it returned. Late November 2025, astronomers at Mauna Kea in Hawaii were the first to see it, a faint glimmer reappearing from behind the sun's glare. But this time, something was different. The light curve had changed. The trajectory had shifted, slightly, but deliberately. It was as though 3I Atlas had corrected its own course. The pattern of motion wasn't random. It was precise, intelligent. The Deep Space Network re-established contact, but the signal that came through wasn't the same repeating pulse as before. It was compressed, layered, and hauntingly melodic. For hours, the transmission echoed through NASA's systems like a digital heartbeat. Within it, cryptographers found harmonics shaped by mathematical ratios that mirrored the Fibonacci sequence, the universal blueprint of nature itself. Spirals in galaxies, patterns in shells, the rhythm of life. And for the first time in this entire mystery, the scientists who had spent sleepless nights analyzing data began to realize something profound. This wasn't a random act of cosmic interference. This was communication, a conversation, one that had been happening long before we ever started listening. But what was it trying to say? When the decoded harmonics were visualized in 3-dimensional mapping software, the waveform unfolded into a pattern, eerily familiar: 3 concentric spirals, rotating inward, converging at a single point. At the exact center, a vector, aligned perfectly with Earth's orbital plane. It was as if 3I Atlas was pointing home. And then, as suddenly as it began, the transmission ended. No fade-out, no drift, just silence. But this time, humanity wasn't the same, because the silence didn't sound empty anymore. It sounded like a pause, the kind of pause that comes before the next sentence in a story we were never meant to hear. In the months that followed, the world began to see itself differently. Scientists debated whether 3I Atlas was an alien probe, an ancient machine, or a messenger from a civilization long gone. Philosophers asked if we were chosen or simply next. But for those who looked deeper, beyond the fear, beyond the noise, a subtler truth emerged. Maybe this wasn't contact at all. Maybe it was a mirror, because how we reacted, the secrecy, the fear, the denial, revealed more about us than about whatever was out there. Maybe 3I Atlas didn't come to invade or even communicate. Maybe it came to observe, to measure who we are when faced with something greater than ourselves. Every civilization reaches a moment like this, when the horizon of knowledge expands faster than its understanding. And when that happens, the question isn't whether we're alone. It's whether we're ready to stop being afraid of the answer, because perhaps the real message wasn't sent in that 11.3-second pulse. Maybe the message was this moment, this awakening, this realization that the universe isn't a cold, empty void. It's alive. It's listening. And tonight, it whispered back. If you felt that same chill of wonder that keeps us staring at the stars, don't stop here. The story of 3i Atlas is just one chapter in the universe's endless dialogue with us. Because out there, in the darkness between the galaxies, something else is moving, waiting to be found. So stay curious, stay questioning, and keep your eyes on the night sky, because the next signal might already be on its way. Click on the next video to continue this journey through the cosmos, where every mystery we uncover tells us just a little more about who we really are.